my goodness, a little Sunday pod.
Ad-free.
Ad-free Sunday? My goodness, what a treat. What a treat. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the DMVR Nuggets podcast.
Let's go.
Do you have an air horn? Do you have like an audio air horn you want to contribute to the chorus?
I don't know. Under pressure like that? No, I'm going to blow it. I would blow it.
We should have prepped you.
We really should start. I always forget until right when you start doing it. That's
Well,
what I
also,
remember.
like, it feels fine until you do it in front of a
Stranger.
industry
I don't want to
luminary, and then you
I don't
feel
want to open
quite stupid.
in this bar that I've been wanting to come to for so long on a bad air horn.
Right.
I don't
Oh,
want
you
the
can't do
first
that.
thing to be that.
You never recover from that. Guys, we obviously have a great show. Not because I have D-Line in the house, but he is here.
It's not because of that.
It's not because of it. I've also got Brendan Vogt.
I think I'm somewhere in the middle here.
You probably are. But it is special because of our guest. You guys know him. You love him. You've been reading him for years. It is, of course, the great Zach Lowe. Zach,
Welcome.
Finally made it to the bar. I'm so happy you got to check it out.
It's exceeding my expectations. It's a beautiful bar. You have beautiful offices in it. This is like the Nuggets people have all told me for a long time. This is a special thing they got going on here. This is awesome.
That's awesome. That's good street cred too, by
Yeah.
the way. So thanks for
Your check's in the
thanks
mail.
for giving us
Yeah.
that one right there.
Clip that right now.
Yeah,
Put that up.
clip that and put it out. No, it's also fitting that it's right now because we could have done some things maybe different times, different moments, even earlier in the series. But now Denver's up 3-1. We're a game away. None of us know how to act.
No.
I'm serious.
Not at all.
The Lakers series is big, so I don't know if you knew this, but the Nuggets have never beat the Lakers in the playoffs.
I did.
And
yeah.
every time they've made it to the conference finals, it's the Lakers waiting for them, and most of the time it's a beatdown. Game 3 was the emotional apex of that series. And then Game 4 happened, and it was almost not I want to say a letdown, but it was almost like we'd already been celebrating. And that's why with this one, I almost feel, I mean, I'll start with you. You're like me. You have a huge appreciation for Heat culture and Heat and this team and what they've done. We're starting to count them out. I'm counting them out. Is this a dangerous move?
It's always sports is sports because stuff happens that you were like, what just happened? So like I'm used to what just happening.
Yeah.
So I am not counting anybody out, but I don't know what the line is on tomorrow's game.
9.5, I think.
It feels like I've been doing this a long enough time where series start to feel like other series you've seen before. This feels like a series where deep down in their soul,
Right.
they may not say it. They may not even say it to themselves. The Heat probably know if the Nuggets play like a B+ game, they can't beat them. Like the Nuggets need to play like a B minus, and the
Game
Heat
2.
need to play an A kind of game, and that's just where we're at. And am I counting them out? No, because if they win tomorrow, Game 6 is in Miami. Like the whole thing changes, but I would be surprised if they won tomorrow.
When you look at the series, so Denver wins Game 1. Game 2, they drop at home. And I think that Miami in every series has had a moment when they've been able to put a team on the edge, and then if they gain the advantage on that, they're just good at getting in your head, I think. And they never got to do that, I think, against Denver. And that's kind of how I feel that the series, to me, that's at least how it feels. Before you get into the X's and O's of it, do you feel that in the abstract, that's what it is? They never got to get that on Denver where they said, hey, we are good at putting doubt in your mind.
So Game 3 was big in that regard, and like a pretty clean Nuggets win by the end. To me, if you're talking about a stretch like that, not to overdo it and blow it up into more of a historic moment than it was, but it felt like that was when Jokic got his 5th foul. Like then Butler cuts it to 5, I think, 86-81
right away
with an and one, and it just felt like here's what the Heat, this is what they do. They're going to find a way to steal this win. They're going to sneak in the back door with Jokic out and get this win, and then it's going to be 2-2.
Right.
And then they're going to think we got them rattled. We got Game 5 at home. They're going to be rattled. They haven't been behind in a series the entire playoffs. 2-2 is the worst it's been for them against Phoenix. We're going to have that game at home. They had Game 5 against Phoenix on the road. Or no, they wouldn't have had it at home, but they'll be rattled. And the Nuggets were like, the rest of the Nuggets, particularly Jamal Murray, were like, no, we're good.
Right.
We're good. We're not giving you the opening.
There are these moments. There was one in the Lakers series as well, and Jokic goes to the bench because of foul trouble. And this has been the undoing of the Nuggets all season long. And there was something extra powerful about them surviving those stretches in this moment in terms of what you were learning about. Are they actually more mature, more ready for these moments? And they just seem to be they just seem to be executing in those moments where maybe 2-3 years ago you could see it sliding the other way.
But what was 2 or 3 years ago, right? I mean, like that's why I think people have had a hard time contextualizing the Nuggets run is like,
Yes.
it seems sudden, but it's not sudden. And I don't need to go back in history and derail your podcast, but I think we would have been here already had
Oh, my
Jamal Murray
God.
not gotten hurt. And so that's why it feels strange, I think, to some people. Like, are they mature? Well, 2 or 3 years ago, like the last 2 years when the competition got to a point, they were drawing dead against those teams, and now they're not anymore because their second best player is healthy.
Right.
So we've had a phrase for this we've been saying the entire time, and that we've been stuck in purgatory. We knew what we had, but we knew that we didn't have all of it, and we just simply had to wait it out. And we feel like you clearly do. You just said it. This would be our 3rd championship. So
It's okay.
Well,
we're going to get more. Zach Lowe gives us credit for 3 titles.
No, did not happen. The Milwaukee Bucks championship,
Oh, come
Sure.
on.
is a championship.
asterisks, we hear.
The Warriors championship last year was actually that was one of my favorite, just sort of not unexpected because I was high on the Warriors going into last year, but that was a fun playoff
I agree.
for sure.
Yeah. It was cool to see the KD-less Warriors sort of come back and have another moment.
And by the way, speaking of the Warriors, I don't want to get into any of the Jokic MVP, Embiid, all
you
that
don't?
stuff. Don't want to do it.
Oh, okay.
We haven't
You don't-
just kidding.
you
No,
wanna
just
escape the
in
unending
terms
hell
of
that we've
how
lived in?
bad the dialogue
Yeah,
got
yeah.
in February, March, whatever. But the funny thing about that Warriors series last year, it was framed in some quarters as like, well, they exposed what Jokic is not on defense. But the Warriors, to a man, I'm talking front office coaches, Draymond Green on his own podcast, came out of that series with even more respect for Jokic than they did going into it, which is unusual for a 4-1 series that was never really competitive. They were like, oh my God, this dude is a monster.
And Zach, like, this is the thing about the experience for us is because we've seen, we're obsessive, right? We're watching every Jokic thing, and we're seeing everything that's said about him by anybody. We're, of course, like locked in, including Draymond. So we're watching the last 2 years going, man, the Nuggets without Murray beat Damian Lillard? This is amazing. And then they get to the next round and get swept, and everyone's like, how crummy is this team? I'm thinking, guys, this was awesome. They made a first round, and then Draymond, they lose to the eventual champs, and Draymond comes out and says, that's a tough dude. Like, it took everything for us to stop him. And then everybody, they lost so easy, and this or that. It's like, that's why this year's been so gratifying, is because we've had a strong belief. I didn't know if they were going to win the title. I'm not going to sit up here and say we knew they were for sure going to win. I just knew they were as good as anyone.
By the way, they have not.
That's
yet.
right.
They have not.
As of
That's
recording this.
Well, you already gave them 3, Zach.
Yeah, like, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the 3 metaphorical championships.
We're in the
you've
middle of
awarded them.
the Lowe dynasty, as we recall it.
Yeah.
We call
Oh
it.
boy.
No, but-
Okay, here we go.
But here's the other thing, because you are right. We got to preface the whole podcast by saying, look, we're doing the show one day before Game 5, where we believe the Nuggets are going to close it out, but we'll find out. But the way that it's gone now, 15 wins and 4 losses, I do feel like that contributes a little bit to what you're saying. You never get credit for back. We're joking about that. You never get credit for that. But I do think that there is a way Denver could have gotten through this year where people would have said, yeah, but I almost feel like the dominance is the part that people are like, no, man, this team was really good, and it was hiding in plain sight because of all the circumstances.
Yeah, and I think if they were to win tomorrow, 16-4, I went through on the flight here. Part of what I was doing was going through history, like what are the best records, what are the best net ratings, because they're plus 8.2, I think, per 100 possessions right now, which is 5 above anybody else. And plus 8.2, it doesn't put you in like the upper echelon. There are some awesome teams, including the Warriors team, which I think like almost doesn't count. It was so good.
Yeah.
But it's really good, and 16-4 is puts you pretty close to the upper echelon in terms of record. I mean, there are some teams with better net ratings who didn't win 80% of their games in the playoffs. So I do think that matters, and it's the flip side of that is that's why we're starting to see they got to play all these play-in teams, and the road wasn't. So that people are looking at that record, and the people who are skeptical about the Nuggets to begin with are looking at it, well, there must be some explanation for that record other than that the Nuggets are awesome, which is really what the explanation is. The Nuggets are just awesome. They're an awesome basketball team.
Well, I said I love it because some of this was we're obviously big on Jokic. The Jokic versus Anthony Davis. Like, I don't know how he's going to solve that one. I don't know. And then by the end of the series, it was, well, there was nobody they could throw on Jokic. It's like, hold on, man. That's a hard curve from he's going to be shut down to, well, they just didn't have the bodies to go at him. And I feel like this whole run, that's why I say I love it. Because we have a thing here in Denver. It's the spirit of the West. We don't care about the coast. We like to make fun of it, but
no coast bias.
No
right?
coast bias.
Clip that too. Yeah,
no coast bias, man. Where we almost like invert it to where it's like, oh man, I hope you guys say something even more annoying.
Can I, going back to the Lakers series, I would love to talk to Michael Malone about. He must have known they were just going to roll the Lakers, because after game 1. The way he was like, oh, Rui Hachimura?
Totally.
Rui Hachimura, guys? You think we're not going to have an answer for that? I was like, dude, you're only up 1-0,
1-0,
man.
1-0.
Like,
It was that close.
dial it back a little bit. But in his head, he must have been like, we got this. Like,
I can
we
tell
got
you,
this.
Zach, we have never seen him act like that before. So we were saying the same thing.
So I have a theory on it. I don't even know if we've discussed this. I have a theory on it. The Nuggets don't have a lot of bravado. Bruce has some of it, and Jamal has some of it. I don't even know if I'd call it bravado, because it's not podium bravado. It's like ball in his hand bravado. I wonder if Malone kind of sensed that of like, I have to fill a role. I have to tell this team I have to be the one to say we're the best. And because you need a little bit of that in you to win a title. You need a little, like, you guys have to prove to us that you belong, not us prove to you.
I think that we have tapped into Michael Malone's upbringing. I think growing up in New York and like being a tough like Brooklyn kid or wherever he's from, like, I just feel like this is who he's always meant to be.
Queens.
He's a queen. Yeah. Queens represent. I just
Former
feel like
8-year Queens resident right here.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some
I'm telling
Jersey
you,
background
you're
in there too. Just
not
so
that you needed it, but that's your in right there. I mean, Malone.
We've talked about it on the podcast. So he would tell you, I lived in yuppie Queens, and he lived in real Queens, which is 100% accurate. But it's still Queens. I lived in Queens, right by the East River, looking at Manhattan. He lived in like Queens.
Right.
There's levels to it, for sure.
he lived in Coming to America, Queens.
There's nothing thoughtful about it. You think it's just like, he can't help it. He just had to go there.
I think that Michael Malone we've watched him go through the same transformation that we're going through, where you're like, okay, we're the Nuggets. Like, he's a team, he's sort of always questioned, not only in town, but nationwide. And like, the more comfortable, and he's like, wait a minute, like, we're better than, like, why are we being, like, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
what are we waiting for here?
Gone from that
my
to
thing
this.
my thing was, coaches are wired to think the worst thing is around the corner.
Yep.
They're wired to be like, we're up 3-0, we've won every game by 30, but guys, like, one bad quarter, the whole series could swing. For him to be like that after game 1, he just must have been like, I'm not afraid of these guys at all. It's like LeBron and AD.
And I wonder, because I think a lot of Malone's podium stuff is premeditated, thoughtful. I wonder how much of it is he wanted his team to feel that and carry that as well.
And that's
Just-
what
That's
I
your
mean.
theory.
That's
your-
my theory. Is I think he was doing that as of like, no, guys, we're not going in here hoping we squeak by and sneak up on these guys. It's our time, and you need to carry it like it's our time. And I think the team actually has. Like, to his credit, the Nuggets have carried themselves through this playoffs. Like, they're not afraid of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and Anthony Davis and LeBron James and none of these guys in Heat culture. It's a respect, but it's like, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Nuggets culture. We're not talking about the duo over there. We're talking about the duo over here. And
So if you're talking about not afraid, and like the moments, like that define a playoff run, just talked about Jokic's 5th foul, that stretch, game 5 against Phoenix. I thought, and forgive me if I'm repeating myself, that game 2 win against the Lakers was up there in terms of meaningful wins, because, correct me if I'm wrong, the Lakers are up like 10-12 second quarter of that game, and it feels like a Lakers game. It's ugly, it's a grind. Then the Nuggets like roar back and take the lead, and that's the moment where they're staring like, oh, we're here. We're about to go up 2-0 in the conference finals. We're about to be 2 wins away from a place that we have not been before in the NBA, to the franchise. And then they get a little rickety, and I don't remember the exact ricketiness of it, but the thing that started it to me was when Michael Porter Jr. stepped over the baseline, inbounding the ball, and the Lakers scored. And all of a sudden, I believe did the Lakers get that to 2 at one point?
I don't remember,
can't remember how
that
close,
but it did get it felt over, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're like,
And
it's
that,
not
but
I
there were
think it was- I
like
think it was
three
at
and a
like
half.
five.
They
I
were
thought
like
it was five,
okay, but they were like 3.5, 3:45 left, and it was like
There was too much time left.
Okay, so here's the moment. Like they're either gonna kind of quake, like we've seen the Bucks quake and the Celtics quake and the Sixers quake, or they're gonna like settle themselves and just do enough to get the win. And I thought it feels like a fait accompli now. Like of course they were at home, they won the game. That game felt big to me at the time.
I actually still think this is the difference between the Nuggets and past iterations. Obviously, your point about the injuries matters, and I do think maybe they have made a finals by now. But this particular group, I think, just has that 5% more, that maturity of they know when it's getting rickety, they know when to put their foot down, they use the time off between games really well. Whereas I think, look, their first ever, playoffs, they barely squeaked by San Antonio. They don't beat Portland. They were better than both those teams, but they had to learn a lot of these lessons along the way.
And I wonder how much the injuries played a role in that. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a lot of purgatory was no fun to be in, and I just wonder if
Never
there's
is.
a little bit of a realization. Very few young teams have the realization of how fragile all of this is, and Denver does because they went through it.
So let me ask you guys a question about purgatory then, because when you ask people within the Nuggets this question, you get a surprising amount of division in the answers. Do you think the 2 years without Murray was big in terms of Jokic having to say to himself, all right, I've got to score more for this team to win? Because some people within
You
the
get
Nuggets,
split. I love
you
that.
will get a split on that
Yeah.
on that answer. Some people will be like, I think you're just kind of making up a story that's not there. And some people will say, no, absolutely. And if it's not that, then from your perspectives, like what did they learn in those years that's paying off now, or was it really just purgatory?
From my perspective, absolutely. Like Jokic being forced to take on a position that he's not naturally in him, to be not only the spoken leader, but the leader on the court, the scoring leader. I mean, he always wants to defer. It's just in his nature. But all along that time, he was also getting in bigger and bigger and more meaningful international competition, where he had to then also carry the weight of being the face of Serbia in the World Cup qualifiers and things like that. And there were just all of these lessons along the way. Like Jokic to us is always like, I always look at him as a guy that is cursed with this basketball town. Like more than anything, he just wants to race horses and live like an unbothered life. But unfortunately for him, fortunately for us, he's the most gifted basketball player I've ever seen. So there's just all of these steps where he's like, okay, I can do it. All right, fine. He is he's the leader. He's just is foisted into a position they didn't want, and for that reason, it's not about him. It ends up being about the team, but ultimately, it's about him.
What do you think?
Murray touched on this a bit today. In my opinion, I think he was touching on this. He mentioned, yes, Jokic is playing better than ever, but he thinks there's more to come because he thinks he can be even more dominant. And I wonder if it's what you're talking about, this lesson of sometimes the right play is that guy can't guard me. And what that does to a defense, especially across a series, I do think he learned in the MVP years that sometimes it's just about dropping 16 in the third because they can't stop you. Across 82, I think there are different calculations. This year he showed he clearly wanted to get Murray going early, Porter going early. But I do think he learned in those MVP years that in a must-win game, sometimes that just means must score.
Yeah. I think my perspective probably goes back before purgatory. I've always said, one of my takes is that culture plays such a big part in basketball development. Jokic grew up in the Serbian school of basketball, which is all about positionless, everybody does everything, but also about it doesn't matter who scores, the team is doing stuff, and they just look at that stardom a lot differently. And there's just a lot of positives, but it's not all positives. And I think that the story of his 8 years in the NBA is taking that foundation and then getting the sort of NBA version of that, which is, no, it is all the stars. The stars make the game and this or that. And I think he's just moved somewhere in the middle. I don't know where on that scale. And I don't know that it was just because of the Jamal Murray absence, because I think it was already he was already coming to him where he started to accept that, no, sometimes I need to be the star. The quote-unquote star. I need to take over and be aggressive. And he's just gotten better at it. But certainly not having Murray led to more moments where that arose, where it's like, I have to take over this game now because there's no one else to do it.
Yeah, it's just kind of human nature. Like, you want those 2 years to have meant something that it now pays off today and not just have been like gap years.
Right.
Like, you want, you're as storytellers, as humans, we want those years to have meant. They obviously, they mean things, but to different individuals involved in them. Maybe Michael Malone learned stuff about the team as a coach, but you really want to impart importance on those years and not have it be like, we just kind of had to wait a while.
Aaron Gordon, I would say, I think that it was really good for him. It was reps with Jokic and him being elevated to the number 2 guy because Porter was also out. I think that made their chemistry fast track in a certain way. But I will say, I remember when Murray was out, I thought this is going to be great for Porter. This is going to be Porter's chance to be a number 2 and run next to Jokic. And he got hurt right away. So then it took that away as well, which was unfortunate.
The Gordon point is good too, though. And that Golden State series, maybe this is to the point you were just making, the kind of thing we tend to do. Right. But I think he learned so much from that series about how to be a playoff guy, a 16-win guy. Maybe the same way Wiggins was playing for Golden State, similar impact now for Gordon in Denver.
I definitely think it was. Draymond Green, I don't know if you heard the story, but Draymond Green went at him in that playoffs. I think there's always a guy where you... Draymond is looking, where's the weak point mentally? I'm going to try to go there. And I thought AG responded really well under the circumstances, and I to Vogt's point, I think it toughened him up. I want to ask you, let's go back to Jokic. You're one of the first Jokic guys. Do you remember what it was that drew you to him? Like,
could you say that again for the people who are still mad about my MVP vote this year?
Well, hey man,
they're actually madder about the kicked ball, Zach. But we can talk about.
We'll talk about the kickball. Okay, we'll get to the kickballs later. I will address the kickballs.
By the way, I'm not mad about your vote at all.
I will address the kickballs with the directness and force of Nikola Jokic's feet kicking the basketballs.
I can't wait till we get to that. You know what? You can't tease it. We have to go to
it. No. I want to go back to first Jokic guy.
All right, first Jokic.
I remember vividly having Howard Beck on my Howard Beck shout out on the low post, maybe in like March of Jokic's rookie year.
Oh wow!
And I don't remember off the top of my head who came first and second in rookie of the year that year, but I remember it being like, this is a pretty ironclad 1-2. And I asked Howard. It was a leading question because I wanted to talk about Jokic. I was like, who's third on your ballot right now? And Howard went through a few guys that were not named Jokic, and I was like, dude, there's one answer to this question right now. You got to start watching this guy Jokic in Denver. Just the passing right away was like, whoa, what is going on with this dude? And then from then on, but I did. I one of the first big national Q&As Jokic did was with me at a Warriors game in Oracle, where back then you could just ask Nick, Denver's PR guy, like, hey, can I get 15 minutes with Jokic to do a Q&A? He's like, yeah, sure. So we're talking about friends, talking about drinking Coke on the sidelines. And it was just like, the whole point of this Q&A was like, here, ESPN audience, here's this guy that you need to watch. You know what happened in that game? You probably remember the highlight, but don't remember it was that game. He crossed up Draymond at half court behind the back, and either went in and dunked it or Jokic dunked it. And the whole crowd was like, what just happened to Draymond Green? That dude did that to Draymond Green. So yes, I was early on Jokic.
I love it. That game was one of his big games where, again, I think they lost the game because it was the Warriors, but it was one of those ones where, Draymond, I think at the time looks back and does almost the Gary Payton of like.
We looked at each other on press row like, what just happened? That's Draymond Green.
I think it was around that time too. It's funny, it's bringing back the memory. Michael Malone was asked later on about Jokic bringing the ball up the court because, again, everything was so new at that time. And he said a quote that I'll always remember. He said, he's actually the best ball handler on the team. And I remember thinking like, all right, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think he's right.
It is amazing. Like, there was late in game 4 the other night in Miami when Miami was trying to press and accelerate the game. He brought the ball up on the left sideline and in pretty tight confines with, I think, Bam pressing him. And I was watching it being like, it's not normal that you're not worried about a center bringing the ball up in this circumstance. Like, you should be worried about that. And
he went coast to coast with his left hand. I think it was this series, maybe.
Yeah. It's just so comfortable doing it. It doesn't always look right. Sometimes it almost looks weird, but then a guy will go for a steal and
the water polo.
He uses his body. He uses his body really, really well.
All right, I want to do some updated Jokic takes because you've had good Jokic takes throughout the years, minus a few that we'll quibble with, the kick stuff or this or that I disagree with.
You are pro kickball and have been from the beginning.
I'm so pro kick, but I will get to why here in a second. But I want to go through some old ones. The oldest one I remember, once people started to accept that he was an okay player, not even a great one, that he was going to be just so hard to build around. Just so hard to build around Jokic. This was one of the earliest
This is my
ones.
takes
No,
or
no,
just
no,
a
no, no,
take?
no, no,
Okay.
no. These are not Zach Lowe
Okay.
takes. I just want to kind of
gonna
walk
walk
through
back
how
to
far
say.
we've
We
gone.
just bring up all the we're like, what about this?
Yeah, we just brought
Because that definitely, I was gonna say, I don't think I said that.
No. This was one of the early things when people started to just try to, take the air out of the balloon that was like his rising stock. I think he might be the easiest player to build around.
So I think so I would equate that take with Nate Duncan, who's awesome, and I listen to his podcast as often as I can.
He's a friend.
Has said frequently on his podcast, I'm not sure they can win 4 playoff
Right.
series with Jokic's defense. I
Right.
think that when you're saying hard to build around, it couldn't have been about offense,
Right.
right? Like the easiest.
But I think
you think it could have been about offense?
Even early on, it was this idea of, but how do you make the center your best setup guy? Like, that's
But
weird,
see,
and then what do you
the thing
need?
about Jokic that people missed for years and years and years is that only now is it common on like TV, like the most national TV broadcasts to hear the Dirk comparison.
Right.
Some of us have been making the Dirk comparison for like 5 years.
Right.
And I think if anybody thought you couldn't build an amazing offense around Jokic, it was the idea that he was just a setup guy and like a good scorer. And I would watch him and be like, guys, he's shooting like 55% on mid-rangers. He's one of the best clutch scorers in the NBA. The guy doesn't really... He's got the one-footer like Dirk, and he's big and whatever, but he doesn't look as fluid maybe, but the production is there, and maybe that's what to me, that question, when I heard it in the media, was all about defense.
A lot of it was about defense, but there was also just the idea of, well, what kind of player? You don't want to put this type or this type of guy, and I just think that the thing about Jokic that people are catching up to, but is that he actually just has all offensive skills, like every single one. So whatever your skills are, just take those off of his plate, and then he'll do the other stuff. So I think his two-man game, and I'm not trying to take away from Murray, who I think is a perfect partner for him. We'll get to Murray here in a bit. I just think that if you put him with Devin Booker or Luka Doncic or any type of mold, Kawhi Leonard, there's something he can do to make those guys even better and make their offensive shine.
I mean, he might be the best passer in the NBA, and he might be the best low post scorer in the NBA. That combination alone is unprecedented. He's also an elite mid-range scorer, both on catch and shoots and on self-created shots. He's also a very good three-point shooter who can also pump and drive off the arc if you run him off that shot. Like that, being elite, he's not just good at all those things. He's elite
the
at
top
all
level,
of them. That combination has never existed before in one player who is 7 feet tall. It's just never happened.
Yeah. So, like when I hear people talk about how Jokic can't do it, it's because he's like an archetype that hasn't existed at this point. And
It's not even. I even don't. People say archetype, and I'm like, don't even. There's archetype implies that there are going to be others.
That's what I mean. So there are. You look at other players that you could sort of crowbar into being a Jokic type player, and you imagine building around Sabonis or Şengün or some of these other guys that are not your prototypical center that has played in the NBA, and that would be disastrous. I think to build around them. Unfortunately, Jokic is just so transcendently talented that he breaks the paradigm, but I don't think that you could try to recreate it.
Go ahead. You're going to object to it.
Well, I kind of want to hear. I've given my take on this.
So,
topic,
like,
but-
I think Sabonis was awesome this year,
Yep.
and the Kings were legit really good.
Right.
Like, losing to the Warriors in 7 is a good outcome for them in a toss-up series. I think the Şengün thing is going to be really interesting in Houston, because I do think the low-hanging fruit for the Rockets is just put more of the offense in Şengün's hands and they'll get better right away. But I think what we're going to realize with all those guys is, and Sabonis averaged like 6.5, 7 assists this year.
Yep.
He was great.
The difference between a very good big man passer and Jokic is a chasm in terms of just quality of passing. Like those guys are really good passers. Jokic is from another planet.
So I equate Jokic to Curry, who Curry opened up our eyes to a new way the game can be played. We thought that was a dumb way, take all those crazy shots, and it's like, oh no, it actually can be effective. Running him around the way you do, how does it change the defense? to me, it's similar. The thing is, there's never been another Steph, but there have been a lot of B versions of Steph that
There's
have
been
come
some
through.
Trae Youngs.
Yeah, I mean, but even better than that, there have been good players that now you say, okay, can we build around them? Well, not the way the Warriors build a dynasty. It's not going to have the same effect. But there are lessons you can take, and there are things you can do. I think with Jokic, it's the same. Şengün's a great example, and obviously Sabonis. Bam's even a good example in some ways in the way he plays and the way he works. But it's like Steph. It's not the same, and so you can't rely on it to be the same. With Sabonis this year, it was his jumper. The playoffs are all about, okay, what is there a weakness somewhere in this team? And if so, do we have the tools to force them to rely on that weakness? And with Denver, with Jokic, I just don't think there is. That's why teams can't do this.
That's why Game 4 was so interesting to me, because they knew the blitz was coming.
Yeah.
And one of their solutions to the blitz was Jokic just saying, hey, I'll just pop and chill at the three-point arc if that makes life easier for you, Jamal. You can just hit me.
Yep.
And if I need to shoot 7 or 8 threes, I will. And I'll probably make enough of them. And if they send a third guy at me, then I make the right pass. And that's why I said on my podcast, it reminded me of the Clippers series in the bubble, because by the end of that series, you really felt like Murray and Jokic had broken the Clippers.
Right.
Like, we tried everything. It all failed. They can do it all. And that was what Game 4 felt a little bit like for me. When he starts shooting threes and it's working, it feels like death.
I also think some of the initial resistance was this antiquated perception of the position, the center position, particularly coming out of the Warrior years, the KD Warrior years, where it's a center needed to be, I don't know, Clint Capella, someone who could survive on the floor somehow.
Catch a lob.
When the truth was that team was actually playing everyone off the floor.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
No
Yeah.
one could guard any of those guys. And so, yeah, you can't just copycat Denver's blueprint, because good luck drafting another Jokic. But the role of the center, I think it's really malleable right now.
It's opened up a little.
I think it's opened up, and I think we viewed it as fixed maybe 2-3 years ago. And maybe some of these guys like Şengün can help. He's not going to go full Jokic, but maybe he can help push our understanding of what the game looks like from those guys going forward.
That's what I think as well. And I think right now, the best player in the NBA, the player ranking thing, I hate it. I promise I hate it more than you do, and I know you don't like it. But I do like the idea of there are players that just look like the best player in the NBA, and we can say it. And I think there's a lot of candidates for it, but I think the run Jokic has had, I've just seen that take more than I expected to. Is it a take you kind of feel that, hey, he's playing at a level that I'm not sure another player would have done what just happened here?
If they win the title, he takes the throne right now as the best player in the league. Now, Giannis will hear all of this, and come out next year like, oh, you all forgot, like this, like I was that guy. And Durant, be interesting to see how Durant comes out next year, because this is the second straight playoffs, and his numbers were much better this playoffs than when they got swept in Brooklyn by the Celtics. But it was the second straight playoffs where there were moments for Durant where I felt like the physicality kind of knocked him a little bit off his spot and where he wanted to be in ways that you don't see in the regular season. But yeah, I think Jokic takes the throne. Who else is in the
Steph
conversation?
Curry, like
Steph's up, yeah, fine. Like
Steph won last year.
Steph
We do
and
this
Giannis.
every
Look,
year, right?
These are all transcendent,
right.
not just Hall of Fame, like upper room of the Hall of Fame guys. And yeah, if Steph wins the title next year and the Warriors win the title and he averages 35 in the playoffs, but I think Jokic takes the throne if they win.
But I just think there was a way they could have maybe gotten to where they are now where that would have been less. There would have been more resistance to it. I'm surprised at how little resistance there is to that right now because of the performance. And again, I don't care if it's like, no, definitively he's won. Just the conversation of why can't he be the best player? He's running through everybody right now. All the best defenders he's running through. And him getting that.
So I think it's two things. It's the thing about how they seem to break every scheme.
Right.
And the realization as more and more people are just there now, there's only one series to watch, right? So you can't be distracted. Viewers, the whole fandom is watching now. And the realization that like, oh, if you don't send help in the post, he's just getting a layup every single time. And he'll miss some because they're going to be tough and contested, and sometimes he'll spin for a hook, but like, oh no, one-on-one in the post is just he's going to score.
Right.
That's all that's going to happen. And like it's against Bam or whoever, like he's going to get a good shot. And I think people have seen that because they don't think of him as a low post scorer that way. Like that's what he is.
All right, let's get to the fun part. The defense here, but I have to start with the kickball. First of all, here's where I want to start with it. There was a play, Aaron Gordon gets the ball and Jamal Murray cuts last game. and Murray goes for it, and Kevin Love sticks his foot out trying to kick it, misses. You know,
He missed? I don't remember that.
he misses. You know why? Because it's not easy. It actually takes an incredible amount of hand-eye coordination. I'm telling you, let me cut it off.
I like that you're going in hot. You're going in with not only is it a good thing, but you
It's
have to
hard.
be good at it.
I'm just saying. And then there was another play in this game, actually, a second one that helped me prove my point here, where Kyle Lowry actually threw the ball away because he went to throw the pass, and at the last minute, Jokic took his foot out, and he kind of just changes the angle on it, and Jokic ends up getting a hand on it. So two perfect examples here, because I think the idea is, if I understand your argument well enough, you don't like it because it's a non-basketball play, and because it's just going to slow the game down, everybody's going to be doing it. I disagree. I think it's hard to do. And I think he uses it, like, first of all, he invented it very clearly. Nobody's ever done this before. It's an invention that I think he has the skill to do.
He broke the record for most kickballs in a season by, like, Thanksgiving. Yeah. And it was, like, very clear that he was... I don't know what he finished at, but he was, like, quadruple anybody else after 50 games.
Doesn't this make it more interesting, though?
So, listen, fans of ball kicking.
Those are called soccer fans.
I love soccer. I've grown to love soccer in my old age. My dad, it drives him crazy that I love soccer. He hates soccer. My anti-ball kicking stance does not originate with Nikola Jokic, and the receipts are there to prove it in my column. The godfather of intentionally kicking the ball at the expense of playing real defense, for me, was Carlos Boozer. And he was the first person that I wrote about it with, because he would be covering the pick and roll, and there would be a pocket pass, and he would like Fred Astaire dance move, all four limbs starfishing out in every direction. Like, please God, let me get something on the basketball, because God knows I can't slide my feet and get into the play. And it's not, you know why it's not a basketball play? Because it's against the rules.
Yeah.
They have tried to
point,
legislate it out of the game. I actually, so that's my only thing. And now, so it predates Jokic, but Jokic, look, if you're going to do it, just go all the way and do it. And he did.
You know what else is against the rules, Zach? Playing defense.
I know,
They're
it's
already
kinda true.
They're at such a disadvantage
Yeah,
out
you
there.
How many
touch it,
teams
but
set a record
you
for
gotta
best offensive rating of all time? And
Well,
this is
and
my
that's
big
why the
thing.
block charge thing to me was such a, like, ban the charge. I'm like, all right, at what point, like, do we just want, and that was at the competition committee meeting in, or it was the GM's committee at the Combine in Chicago. I was told from people in the room, like, the number one topic of conversation was,
Really?
we need to help not everyone was in agreement about it, but, like, do we need to rebalance the game a little bit?
Right.
So maybe kicking,
Hey, man.
maybe more kicking.
So how many
maybe
did we have
you
this
get-
year? Was it like 50 or 60?
I don't remember where it ended up.
was a lot,
I
though.
believe at one point, the last time I checked, he was up to 45 or 50. And, like, I think the season high last year was 13 or
Right.
something like that. And
Yeah.
by Vucevic, I think was
Right,
the previous
right.
There you
kickball.
go. Well,
Probably taught him.
I was gonna say, I'm told, and I don't know if this is the entire Balkans, but it's a very Serbian thing to do.
Oh.
To just find your one little foothold of advantage and
Find the
lean
loophole.
into it.
Find
Hey,
the
look,
loophole.
I will take the L on
way
the
out.
following parts of the kickball debate. Number one, it works. I mean, it was never. I always thought it worked
Right,
because
right.
the only penalty is you get back to 14 on the shot clock. That's
Yeah.
it. It was clearly smart tactically, and no one else seems to care that much. They don't seem to be. It's like me and Jeff Van Gundy and, like, other cranky people. Tom Ziller, in his, I don't know if you guys are subscribers to his newsletter, he came out today or yesterday and said, we got to put a stop to it. It's not a basketball play. So and that made me feel like I've been seen and heard, and I'm not alone.
Here's what I would say. Let's see if anybody else can do this. Let's see if anybody else tries to.
How
and
about
everybody
we
else-
don't? How about we
If they
don't?
do, I say, like, all right, we'll get in here. If we're getting 20 kickballs a game, I'm just saying, Jokic.
You know who
his
should come
skill
back?
is
You know who should
quickness.
come out doing it next year?
Who's that?
Embiid. Embiid should be like, I want to reinvigorate the MVP
Yeah.
talk. Oh, this guy does it. I'm going to start kicking everything.
Nobody shoots the Sombor shuffle. I don't know
The
why.
Sombor shuffle is the Sombor shuffle is the one he hit against the Lakers. Was sometimes you just laugh.
Yep.
You know what?
Every
When
time.
people
A lot,
Every
actually.
single time.
So on being early on Jokic, over the years, the last 6-7 years, I've had many people in my life, both basketball people and casual fans, ask me, why do you always talk about this guy? Like, can you explain to me in one sentence why you like him so much to watch? And my go-to answer was, he does 4 or 5 things every game that make me laugh.
Laugh.
That I just laugh.
That's
and
it,
like
man.
you don't think of that as part of the basketball experience, but I just start laughing. And that would actually intrigue people. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean laugh? Like he's talking trash or like no, he just makes plays that are so ridiculous that I just start laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, even Anthony Davis, after getting a shot right in his face that essentially won the game, laughed. Because what else can you do? You just kind of go like, really? This is what he does? And he does it all the time.
My favorite game in the press box this postseason has been after he does something like that, you look around and see who else is laughing.
Yeah.
You can kind of watch people realizing like, this is what he does every night.
I think he's
Yeah,
the
and his
funniest
nickname
player.
is the Joker.
Yeah, it works.
Like everything,
It works.
it's like everything works perfectly. He's like you got in a marketing department and you came up with the perfect player. Like this guy that can do everything. He's hilarious. He's affable. He wants no part of the spotlight, and he literally makes you laugh. And he's called the Joker.
Have you? What are the streets saying? You know, what are people saying that you hear? Because I always come back to Pat McAfee had a clip the other day where he's like, "I've never watched this guy before, and now I'm up all night scrolling highlights because I can't get enough of him." Do you feel there's been a wave of people that are, you watch him 6 games in a row, you see it?
So I guess those are normal people. I guess people like you that watch every Nuggets
Right.
game are not normal. People like me who watch 2 or 3 NBA games a night, and like Mike Trout could walk in the room right now and be like,
Right,
"Hey,
yeah.
guy, nice to meet you."
What do you do for a living? Yeah.
Or like, I mean, who's the quarterback of the Broncos? It's still Russell Wilson.
It is still
Unbelievable.
Russell Wilson.
Zach, get off
we
our-
actually
get-
don't
get
like
outta
talking
here.
about the Broncos right now.
Like, I couldn't name anybody that plays for the Avalanche unless I know Joe Sakic is the GM.
That's a
you
good
know
one.
what?
Close
There you
enough.
go. Good
Yeah.
call.
Close
Score
enough.
you some points.
I guess that's not normal. So like you want to be snobby about it, like, oh, you're just catching on now. But part of the reason is because not everyone consumes sports the way we consume sports. So I think it is natural that Pat McAfee's a football guy.
Right.
He has to cover every single sport. He's just not going to have time. It's a function of time. Like
Right.
if you're covering the NFL and baseball and hockey, I think the Denver Nuggets kind of go on the back burner
I'm
until
just-
they're in the finals, in the
But
conference
I'm just
finals.
wondering how much do you need? Because that's exactly my point. The people that don't watch every NBA game, don't watch every Nuggets game. Do you need? You don't. It's not one game. I know it's not one game. Sometimes you got to watch 2, 3, 4 in a row to where you start to see the rhythm of how he plays and enough of the highlights to go. This guy is kind of addicting because of those laughs.
The other thing you have to do, and I don't mean this to come out the wrong way, is you have to watch the game.
Yeah.
And the way
Yes, you do.
Well, the way a lot of people consume games is they're at the bar with their buddies,
That's right.
or they're on the couch. They're on their phone.
yeah, look
they're
up,
doing
yeah.
this, and you'll even see it at games, and like. Then you'll hear the crowd cheer, and you'll be like, "Well, I must have missed something interesting." Like you actually have to watch the game. Now, if you watch enough games, he'll produce enough highlights, and even if you only see half of them, you'll be like, "Oh, this guy's interesting." I agree with you. Like to me, it's an easy sell. You watch 2 or 3 Nuggets games, and it's pretty clear. Like, oh, this guy's a wizard. Like
Yeah.
this guy
It's fun.
is
It's
doing
fun.
stuff. He's a magician. He's doing stuff on the court that no one else is doing.
All right, let's talk about Jamal Murray, though, because I feel this is a big moment for him. I mean,
No kidding.
I have no idea how to quantify Jamal, and I watch every game of his. I watch every game of his twice. He is, I think, I would say, definitively below the guys that make the All-Star game every year that he's been in it. I don't think he's been snubbed a single time.
He hasn't.
But
But someone who picks all-star rosters,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
tell you, I've never sweated his exclusion
Right.
from a 12-man all-star roster.
But at the same time, I don't know how many players I would pick above him to play Game 5 tomorrow. It's a very, very, very small list of guys I would even consider at the guard spot. And I just don't know. What do you make of it?
Well, clearly he has guts and smarts.
Yep, I was
And guts and smarts that do not waver under pressure. And that's like half the battle, honestly,
Yeah.
like at this level. I think part of the difficulty people might have with Murray is his partnership with Jokic. They both amplify each other
Yep.
and lift each other up in so many subtle and obvious, but also subtle ways. And it's natural to give most of the amplifying credit to the superior player who's won the MVP twice. And so people try to think like, well, do all these little cagey hesitation dribbles and pocket passes and half spins and all the stuff that we see that makes Jamal Murray and gets little extra pockets of space. is it as effective if the other guy is not doing all those little things just as well and then capitalizing on that extra space as efficiently as Jokic does? But I think Jamal could play. You give him a pick and roll guy who's good in whatever way, he's going to be good. And, I agree with you. The biggest thing for Denver this year was they needed Jamal. If they're going to win and people within the organization will tell you this openly, if we're going to win the title, we need Jamal Murray to essentially be an all-NBA level player.
Yep.
And he was close to that at his best moments, and this season he was not. And in the playoffs, this is what he's been. And they're about to have a chance tomorrow to win the title.
How do you guys feel? We haven't even talked about this. I just count Murray in right now for being great.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? But in the regular season, it's like moments of greatness and stretches and then this or that. But to me, it's funny how little I actually think about that anymore.
Are you asking me, the official Jamal Murray guy of the podcast? He's my Jamal Murray.
Guy.
The thing about Jamal Murray is that he has been so wildly inconsistent, and most of it has to do with health and fitness during the regular season.
Fitness,
he'll come into the season after that bubble run where he was supremely in shape and was the best version of himself to that point. Then he came into the season, and it was understandable. They didn't have any time off, and it seemed like he wasn't, really. He took a little bit of a gap. He came back in. He wasn't quite the same guy. Then he gets injured as the season goes on, and then he's out for a long time. He comes back in this year. Seems like he's out of shape again, or at least working back from the surgery. Understandable. Like, everybody goes through that. And he's just now getting back to that place that he was in the bubble. And now it's undeniable. You're like, this guy's incredible. Why isn't he like this all the time?
But
and he's just not. He hasn't been in the regular season.
Do you think it's watershed? We're over a hump?
Not necessarily. I think you might see. I think where I'm at is I'm confident that he'll overcome obstacles eventually.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So in this postseason, whether it's Alexander Walker picking him up full court, Highsmith, or they start Kevin Love, so now Jimmy can guard him, you'll see that briefly throw Jamal off.
Right.
But it feels like 100% of the time in this postseason, he's burst through the other side.
Yeah.
And not just with tough shot making, the smarts you were mentioning, which I think is really on
Such a
display
smart
right
player.
now more than ever,
Yep.
is that this guy is not just a Jokic dance partner, he's a floor general too. And I think that stuff, I have so much more confidence in his mental game than I did before.
So a couple of Jamal things. So you said tough shot maker. He makes 3 or 4 shots every game that are so demoralizing for the other team.
Yeah.
Like the spin back fadeaway long two is like,
Perfect.
such a gut punch. So after Game 4, Kevin Pelton came on my podcast. We do this after the buzzer. We don't have much time to do any research. And I said, without really thinking through it and going through the research, Mike Conley finally made his All-Star team. Is it undisputed now that Jamal Murray, after a playoff run like this, is the best guy never to make an All-Star team? And is this playoff run so ridiculous that people are just going to pen him in to the All-Star team next year? And not only is the playoff run ridiculous on its own, I feel like that 10 assist stat is going to be sticky for people. Like, oh, he's that good of a passer when it really counts that he's the first guy ever to do this for 4 straight games. I think that's going to be sticky for people.
But to me, that's tied to that mental. Jokic can figure anybody out. But you have to have other people that can play along with you to figure it out, right? If a team's going to double you, somebody has to flash on time, and the spacing has to be right. And I think Aaron Gordon has really learned the spacing. I think KCP kind of knew it already coming in, although you'll notice there's a lot even with KCP of Jokic telling him, hey, man, you're going to do this, this, or this. Michael Porter's the one that I think has figured out a few things. There's still more for him to go to figure out to fully unlock it. But to me, this was the playoff run. Even more, the bubble was a lot of tough shot making, and it was a lot of speed and explosiveness. This playoff run to me is Murray has been on Jokic's level for 98% of this playoffs in terms of what are they doing. I always say play number 1 of this finals. They front the post. They don't call anything. Right. Murray just sees it and goes, oh, fronting, that means I'm going to drive, you're going to pin, I'm going to get a layup.
You know what? So that's the first possession of the series. I can picture is on the right wing. I can picture it right. And Caleb Martin came over and gave it a strong contest, and Jamal Murray did not care. Just powered right through him.
Yep, and finished it.
I think that's 60, 70% about Murray. But it's one of the great things about Jokic is Bam has been really good fronting him and fighting through all those screens. And I bet you guys watching Bam up close all this time been like, this guy's even better than I thought.
Yeah.
But it's a credit to Jokic that for the most part, he's not sitting there stalling out the offense like, no, let me try to seal him and get this. He just goes right into a pick and roll or like use me as a big screen. It's just like he's giving himself up. Instead of a lot of big guys would be like, no, the play's for me.
Right.
Yep.
Swing it over here. The entry pass might be here. He's like, no, let's just go on to the next thing.
I love that because it's hard to describe what makes Yoke great, but that's one of them. Is a lot of guys want to do it their way, and if a team presents something else, Yoke's so willing to be like, oh, I'll just drag you out of the play, and I won't get an assist, I won't get anything. I'm just going to screen you. The alley-oop last game, right? To from KCP to Aaron
AG,
Gordon,
yeah.
was it Jokic going, oh, if I come here and act like I'm posting up Jimmy's going to act like he's fronting me, and the backside's open.
I'm calling it now. If they win the title,
Oh boy.
Jamal Murray's an all-star next year. I don't care if he's averaging 17 points a game again. The coaches at the very least will be like, yeah, come on. Like, are we serious? This guy's going to be an all-star.
I agree with Zach.
Strong. I mean, we've been saying that.
Yeah.
It's like Tony Parker. It reminds me a little bit of Tony Parker back in the day, where the numbers might not be up against some of the guys of the era that put up the flashy numbers, but everyone said, yeah, but the playoffs, this guy kicks his ass.
He's a winner.
So he kicks
Get
their
that
ass, so we
label,
know
and
it.
that's
Also, yeah, once they open up the books and you're a champion, you become a made man. That's it. Like
It is
you're-
kinda true.
You then are regarded as a different. I mean, you know, it's funny to say like only if they win the championship does Jokic become the best player, because he's the best player even if
Yeah,
they don't.
but I have respect
But
for
I know.
winning.
But I'm saying like there are levels and you have to achieve something to
Right.
be viewed a certain way.
That regular season, it's easy now to say, oh, he's clearly the best player. That 3-man MVP race, I mean, those numbers were just like, oh my God.
It was disgusting.
This is and then you throw in like Durant, who wasn't even one of the three, and he had injury issues. But you just think back to that playoffs 2 years ago when Brooklyn was a real team for a hot second and not a, whatever they
Right.
became. Like, he was ridiculous. There's so much top-end talent.
Yoke didn't want it. I have no problem with people go.
he
I have no
recused
problem,
himself.
of like the Embiid vote or any of this, because to me, I look at it and I'm with you. All three guys did something that was so unique statistically that it
Like
became split.
Giannis became a forgotten man in the
Yeah,
race, and then every
crazy.
couple days I'd look at Giannis' stats and be like, "Is it maybe just Giannis?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what am I supposed to
Yeah,
do?"
of course. But so for me, we were joking about bringing this up earlier because I don't care. But the thing I do wonder though is, Yoke didn't want it, and I think because of the negative attention that was coming his way with it, and also I think there was probably a sense of, would this playoff run just carry more pressure if he had that at his back again? And I think the answer is probably yes. But you win this year, if you win, I wonder if he's not going to put up different numbers next year. His numbers are going to look the exact same. His dominance is going to be the exact same. And I just wonder, if he recuses himself first and foremost, like he did this year.
I think he will.
You think he will again next year?
I just think that it's a lot to have everybody staring at him with that focus for so long, and like it's not just the adulation, it's the other side of like why he shouldn't win it, and
Right.
then you are acutely aware of like all of the things that came out that just made the conversation so ugly. And at a certain point, we weren't talking about basketball, and he like clearly it so clearly affected him. And I just think that there's something about Jokic that he knows he has it, and he knows he can turn it off. We've seen him turn it off.
Yeah, we have.
a lot, and I just truly think that he does not want it. Like I
Even
don't-
next year, huh?
I'll be surprised.
Well,
I mean,
one of
obviously,
the
we'll
one
see.
of the advantages he has that narrowed or shrunk to nothing this year is he never gets injured. Like
Right.
he always plays, and normally in a lot. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
In a lot of years, like that is almost dispositive by the end because everybody else misses 20 or 25 games, and it's just like he just comes along and plays 77 games every year.
Let me ask you about the future of this team here as we kind of hit the final part. But Bruce Brown was obviously unbelievable this year for the Nuggets. I don't know if you caught it, about 3 weeks ago, he came out and said, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, he said, there was a rumor that everybody was calling. I was getting a lot of phone calls. Nobody wanted me. I was available 2 days into free agency, and Denver finally called. I feel like he might be one of the big winners of this entire run.
Yes, he will be. Yeah. So maybe he could let us fill out the paperwork for him. He's going to decline his player option.
Son of a biscuit.
For $6.8 million. And unfortunately, the Nuggets don't really have avenues to bring it back. It's funny. I saw Bruce's agent after the game the other night, after game 2, and I was like, Ty, really? Nobody wanted him? Because he was like kind of obviously good in Brooklyn, like not a star, but. And I know they tried to make him this like weird screen setting center,
right.
But it was like very clear that he was a good player, and then we got interrupted and we didn't have an opportunity to really have the conversation. Like I kind of don't believe that nobody wanted him, and maybe nobody was gonna just go 2 years, 15 or 14 right off the bat like Denver was, but like. It wasn't a secret that it's not like Calvin Booth like found something that no one could possibly know. Like the guy's a good player.
Right.
I wonder how much of it was nobody wanted me to play point guard. I wonder if that's part of it. Or
they weren't sure they wanted him to play point guard until like 2 months ago.
I don't know if I want him to.
I'm not sure if that's what they told him, though.
No, it is funny, though. I mean, Bruce, look, he called me out for allegedly saying he wasn't 6'4". So I think Bruce is the guy that hears this tiny, like...
Did he really? I missed that.
Oh, man, it was at the media
Wait,
day
did
for
you
the finals.
allegedly say it, or did you say it?
The funny thing is I think I said it for real. But the thing is, I don't remember. I just remember we were talking about can he guard Jimmy Butler
And
on
Adam
the
said
show.
he's too small.
I think he's too small to guard him or something like that. And at the presser, he points at me and says, I'm 6'4". Like, all right, man.
I was just standing next to Bruce Brown 90 minutes ago on the court at Ball Arena. I wanted to just say hi to him and catch up for a bit. And I'm 5'11" and 3/4. I claim.
Oh no, Bruce, turn it off.
No, I claim.
How far do you go with
I
the
claim
decimal?
6 feet.
Okay,
I
all
claim
right.
6. So let me just claim 6 feet. Let me just say I'm 6 feet tall.
To round it there.
He is like substantially taller than me.
Okay.
It wasn't like sometimes like I remember the first time I stood next to Kemba Walker.
Yeah.
And it was immediately like, oh, you're not your listed height,
right,
or
right,
like Chris
right.
Paul, and like Bruce Brown's like, oh, you're.
He's 6'4".
You're way bigger than I am.
Okay, there you go. All right, Bruce, you hear that? Approved, 6'4".
How's he guarded Jimmy so far? We haven't seen that matchup all that much.
To be honest, man, Jimmy is looking for
getting-
Murray,
yeah.
and outside of that, KCP, and it feels like those are the matchups he's going after. So, Bruce, I don't think that's a target. The future with this Nuggets.
Oh, yeah.
Just as we wrap up here, a lot of people start talking about, hey, man, this team can hold it together. The future, you never know. But when you look at the Nuggets, do you feel like they're built for long-term success? And is this a team you look at and say, hey, I don't think they're getting worse next year?
As long as the big fella's healthy, they're going to be really, really relevant. And as long as the big two are healthy, they're going to be in the upper echelon of teams. I have not yet sat down and started to project the salaries Bobby Marks style 4 years down the road, but
right.
Jamal Murray's contract is sneaking up on you, and that's going to be a big one. And
I don't look forward. We have not had that in this era.
No.
The will he, won't he. It's been 8 years. We have not had a contract year, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Let me be clear. I'm not saying it's sneaking up on you because of the willy won't he. I'm saying it's sneaking up on you because it's going to be huge when it happens, and then that becomes huge. Jokic is huge. MPJ's got 38 and then 41 in the out years of that. AG is like going to be a must player. The second apron is going to be a potential issue for them filling out the roster, and you just sort of start to think about what does that mean for KCP and how do they fill that spot, and does Michael Porter Jr. have to kind of prove himself a little bit more to be part of the long-term core? And it also, like, Christian Brown looks like he's a rotation guy.
Right.
As you guys know, they cannot stop talking about how excited they are about Peyton Watson.
Yeah.
They just made that trade a couple of days ago to kind of move up their draft equity. They're going to have to hit those picks.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, no one hits them every time or even half the time, but they're going to have to find guys like even a guy like Zeke Naji. It would help them if somehow they could, he's got 1 year
I don't
left.
know what happens with him. Yeah, I'm curious if it's here.
I think he has talent.
Sure.
But
Your colleague Brian Windhorst had a great line on his pod the other day where he said something to the effect of, that was a heat check from the Nuggets. He's like, that trade snuck under the radar a little bit, but it was a heat check because it was a signal that they believe that this isn't lightning in a bottle. This is,
my question for anyone, like, why would you believe it's not real or sustainable?
Yeah,
like,
for
what
sure.
would lead? Like, Jokic and Murray are under 30. They clearly make each other way better. The rest of the team makes sense around them.
The starters are locked
Who
up.
in the West are you looking at is like, well, they're unquestionably like the next rising superpower in the West. If anything, they're a bunch of like falling-ish superpowers, and then I keep saying this, but the two teams that were kind of anointed the future of the West are Memphis, and we know what they're going through, and New Orleans, and Zion just doesn't play ever, and so I don't. Denver is correct if they are saying the next 3 or 4 years is a potential window for us.
We've seen the soft, like you win a title, the soft, hey, let's keep it going, but we're not going to really. I feel like trading a first-round pick in the future to come now that's a hard push in some ways.
Yeah, and the argument against the Nuggets that everybody has is that they're the Nuggets. Like that's what we've experienced.
50 years, it's been a fair point.
That's what we've been. Like this is what we've been. This is like been our life for this entire Jokic experience. We're like, this is unbelievable, and everyone's like, yeah, but they're the Nuggets, and we're like, yeah, that's right, and they're like, we kind of at an impasse at that point, but. I'm hoping that starts to change, but that is always the argument. It's it's the Nuggets. What are you talking about?
Do you think any of it is because their name is the Nuggets? Like, I like the name. Do people here like the name?
I think so. Okay. It's an ABA name. When I tell people it's an ABA name, meaning ABA names were weird. The Spirits, the Amigos, the Conquistadors. It's the Nuggets.
God bless the ABA.
The Spurs, the Pacers, like just these weird things. I love that it's here because it is to me. Like Eric has the great line. We're a 50-year expansion team.
We are a 50-year expansion team. Also, it is my personal mission this offseason to reclaim the color gold from the Golden State Warriors so that people think about us as the Golden Nuggets, not the Chicken Nuggets.
Right.
Because we, in my view, have a stronger claim because nobody actually thinks of California as the Golden State. That's unique to them.
Well, there is the California Gold Rush of 1849.
Yeah, we had the same gold rush. That's what. Where do you think they came first? California was further west.
I understand. I just would not disconnect California. But
we're owning gold. Gold is ours.
What I was really asking about the name is because literally at my house 3 weeks ago, I had my daughter and a couple of her friends were over. They were having a late night. I was going to watch the game again the next morning, so I let them watch it on TV. And the littlest kid started going, "Go Chicken Nuggets, go!" And a part of my soul was like, "This is what the 5-year-olds think the Nuggets are." No,
that's why we're taking back gold. Everybody, gold is ours.
I like the Nuggets because it is a little campy, and I just like I said, man.
So inside story from the Lowe household. My daughter likes the Denver Nuggets, and the reason she likes the Denver Nuggets is because we have these two family friends. I'll just shout out Mika and Ducks.
Big shout out.
And we
They're
go.
Watching.
Mika and I went to high school together, and they are, and Ducks is Australian, so they are not NBA fans. And so we have a tradition. We get together the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, that because we're too old to party now, and so we just go to her house. And they like to play a game where we name the city, and they name the NBA team. And their answers are just uniformly wrong, and like wrong in the worst possible ways, like just so far off. Sometimes they'll name the NFL team, sometimes they'll name something totally unrelated. So the four of us are having a couple drinks playing this game, and I say Denver. 2 rooms away, my daughter goes, "Denver Nuggets! Denver Nuggets! Denver Nuggets!" And I was like, "Mata, how did you know that?" And she was like, I don't know. I guess I just like the Denver Nuggets.
Because it's a new day in Denver.
And she's still, to this day, this is like a year or two ago, will still be like, yeah, because remember that time at Mika and Ducks' house, I shouted out Denver Nuggets?
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
I love it.
You see?
She's like, it's the gold rush of 1859, the lesser known but equally as important gold rush.
To be fair to the Golden State Warriors, we were largely known for our silver rush. All the same, we're the Golden Nuggets. We're not the silver Nuggets. Gold is ours.
Zach,
It's a good mission. That's a good mission. I can respect the mission.
Hey, man.
We all need missions.
I need missions.
We're big on missions over here.
I've got devil's
we have
hands.
a few big missions and a lot of side quests. I would call that more of a side quest.
Give me a side
here.
quest. Give me a side quest.
I mean,
We want people to. Well, first off, we want people to. Our main mission is to make everyone appreciate Jokic. Our side mission is to reclaim gold.
I mean, that's a mission. That's like throwing the ring into the whatever fires you had. Mount
Into
Doom.
Mordor, right.
Mount Doom.
That's what we've been doing.
Oh, we've
traveled
been
a
walking
long way to try to
We've been
accomplish
in
this mission.
purgatory, walking towards Mordor for 8 years. We're ready for this. Other side missions appreciate the moxie of Michael Malone.
yeah.
No, don't mock it from a media standpoint. Appreciate
Oh
the
yeah,
moxie.
whiny Michael Malone. We love it here.
This bar was a big mission.
Still, by the way, I would really like, just for the sheer comedy, for Michael Malone to get up pregame tomorrow Be like, guys, everyone in this room, we're up 3-1. You're all counting us out. No one thinks they can win this championship. We're all being counted
Lowe
out.
kept bringing it back to the Lakers series on the DNVR pod.
He kept doing it, man. He couldn't get over the Rui adjustment.
By the way, I know you guys are trying to end the podcast. I'm not letting you do
not.
it.
We're thinking about you. We'll stay here forever.
It is. It's not the likeliest NBA outcome that a coach who talks about his team publicly the way Michael Malone does when they don't play well, and as often as he does, is the coach 8 years later to see this through to the other end. I think it's a cool story. It speaks to the continuity of the franchise. It speaks to his skill and the skill of his staff as coaches, and it speaks to the players, and particularly Jokic and Murray, being willing to just sort of let that be. And I think, we didn't even talk about Game 2 of the finals. They just were flat out bad for 12 minutes of that game, probably.
Yep.
And I'm was astonished at how bad they were. And that was the one last time where he was like, I'm coming at you guys hard, publicly and privately. Maybe that's the secret, is he does it privately first, publicly second. But it's not common that coach gets to see this through to this point.
And the reason I believe that this is the case is because the Cronkies are such a unique ownership group in that they are so divided in their attention.
Yeah.
The Nuggets, they can look at them as a line item, and it's not like Mark Cuban where every aspect of the organization is constantly under a microscope. The Nuggets were sort of allowed to just form in the dark, even in Denver. Nobody was really paying that close of attention to them. There's a lot of steps along the way where Michael Malone, if he was coaching in
New York,
in Silver State or Golden State, would be summarily dismissed. He'd be like, you didn't reach the playoffs.
So
you lost in game 82.
When would that have been? Because people have been saying that, and I'm trying to go back in my own analysis of the team and find a time where I was like, oh, that was really disappointing. I guess people will go back to 17-18, right, when they lose the finale.
No. Before that, the year they trade Nurkic was a big deal because Malone and Nurkic had. I mean, look, it was inevitably going to be doomed. Jokic was surpassing him, so there was going to be tension. But those two in particular butted heads. Goes to Portland, plays unbelievable, comes to Denver and knocks them out of the playoffs. That was the year before Game 82.
Right.
So you're coming off of that one where we thought all year Nuggets were going to the playoffs. Like, oh man, they're there.
Oh,
and
you're not talking about the playoff series. You're talking about the end of the season. They knock them out of the playoffs.
And it just felt like the Nuggets were going to make the playoffs, and then the Nurkic goes off against the Nuggets, and it's like, oh my God, coach-player split. He kills you. Then the next year's Game 82. So it kind of felt like 2 years Denver should have gotten to the playoffs.
If you zoomed out, were those under expectations outcomes? Maybe the Minnesota loss year there was some playoff hype.
They
won. How many games did they win that year?
The thing about
a lot of games
is that it wasn't under expectation because they kept improving every year, but it wasn't like leaps and bounds like it has been this year. But the larger point is that so they were allowed to sort of form this really concrete bond inside the locker room to where Michael Malone does have the ability to talk to his players and publicly about his players in ways where in private they know that he has their back and they are actually a unit. It's not the coach and the team. It's like they have a really solid foundation that they can draw upon. And especially now that things are going in the right way, Malone can just talk crazy and the team has his back.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, Michael Malone did think after that Game 82 loss that he might.
Right. He thought he was
the one I would like to go back and watch, and I'll never have time to do it, is I would like to go back to watch the Portland series from 2019 when they lose Game 7 at home. What was missing? Because Dame was gassed in game. That was the CJ game. Dame was totally gassed. What was missing?
I think the Nuggets too.
What was missing? Yeah, they played so many minutes.
The Nuggets were way up in that game too. They were up by
blew it.
20 points and
nobody made a three. Jokic had 2 threes. I don't think a single other Nugget had one.
I think it goes back to some of the stuff we were talking in the first 10, 20 minutes. I just don't think they were ready yet.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew where to go and when.
So is the starting five on that team Murray, Harris, Jokic,
Torrey Craig, right?
Craig.
Jeez.
This is all publicly available information.
Right?
Millsap, Jokic, yeah. I think that would have been it. And Barton was the sixth man, but he got hurt that year, and that's the year the crowd booed him because he played so terrible in the playoffs. So it was they just weren't ready. I think that, and they had the Warriors waiting for it. It was one of those ones where that Game 7 was the last game they could have won. you know, they were going to go.
Yeah.
So it was almost I remember at the time thinking, like, whether they win or lose this game, who cares? It's kind of an emotional.
I didn't feel that way.
I cared
a lot.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Brendan had a public meltdown on Twitter. I remember it pretty well.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was great.
I did.
You did?
Yep.
I don't remember that either.
I don't remember that.
Were you calling for heads to roll like that kind of meltdown?
No. It was just a media feud. Perhaps I shouldn't have brought it up. We'll talk about it later.
Can't wait to revisit that.
All right, we have some super chats. Some people,
let's
I guess,
tear
want
through
to.
these.
How many do we have here? 13
We'll go
people
quick.
paid to ask questions.
Ulysses Ventura, the heat pack firing up, baby. Smoking some heat packs tomorrow. R.I.P. Bozos. Go nuts.
How much of that did you understand?
Welcome
there,
to
Zach?
the pod, Zach Lowe.
You can bring that with you if you'd like.
I actually don't know what it means. Smoking that pack is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
They
you have
lost,
the. Yeah.
and
I'm just
you-
gonna no comment. Anything I don't understand online, I just no
Yeah,
comment.
maybe while these are being read, do a close up on Brendan Vogt.
Yeah, for sure. GK, a special drink for a special person. Give Mr. Zach Lowe some Rakia. Givali.
Hey, we tried. man. We
really?
tried.
Zach
Yeah,
has
we did.
been to the Balkans. He's tried.
Yeah,
Many
he's
times.
had
I'm
his share
a
of
veteran.
Rakia.
Let me
He's a-
tell you something. If you go to the Balkans and you pass an old lady selling homemade liquor out of a Sprite bottle on the side of the road, do
Good stuff.
not
It's the good stuff right there.
try it.
Get it. That's the stuff right there.
Damon Rangula. $5
Oh, that's
from
our guy,
Damon Rangula.
Daman. That's our guy,
excuse me.
Daman.
Sorry,
Heck yeah.
Daman.
He doesn't know how to super chat, but he
Yeah,
tried
wait,
nonetheless.
David East. Low post on the set. 2 of my favorite pods all in one day. Doesn't get any better.
All right.
There you go.
It probably does, but
Except for now, you don't have 2 pods to listen to. Just
Daman
one.
tried again.
Daman trying
Failed
again.
the second time. 0 for 2.
Benny
I mean,
19
Aaron. That's like Aaron Gordon's had a couple 0 for 2 trips
Yeah,
from the
you gotta
line.
keep shooting,
It's
man. Keep
makes up
shooting.
for it with defense. And
Don't shy away. Keep going.
Benny 1994. Zach, thank you for putting in the work to know this Nuggets team. I'm a big fan of you and your coverage. You are in the club.
Oh, man. That's tough, man. Not everybody makes it in the club.
I
so-
mean, as long as I don't have to wait in, one of my golden rules in life is I don't wait in line to get into bars or clubs. Like,
Yeah, it's a proverbial.
that's a New Yorker thing. Like when people would try to go to fancy places, they'd be like, "We're in New York City. There's a cool bar there
Yeah.
with no line trying to get
Yeah.
in."
I made a loud declaration that I'll never wait for breakfast at a restaurant. And it ended one of my relationships.
Hey man,
My wife would not go for
the
that
2000 World Series ended one of my relationships. I don't know if that's better or worse than breakfast. So.
Benny 1990. Oh, sorry. Clay Manabe, whatever it is. Can Malone improve by making the next few years be less about proving they can win and more about letting younger guys develop sometimes?
How about we just enjoy the? How about
Yeah,
you guys
right.
just have a drink and enjoy that you're one win from
Givali.
the title? Just like ignore that one.
That's your answer.
It's a
There you
good
go.
question.
It's a good
just
question. That's
timing
your
is
answer.
everything.
Good
I'm with
question
you on it, though.
for next year.
Yeah.
Leonard, Zach Lowe, finally at the DNVR bar. Years in the making. Zach's always been one of my favorites. Happy this collab finally happened.
Let's go.
Collab.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Oh, look, we got another one from Daman.
Daman,
Let's go.
third time's a
Screwed
charm.
it up again. Let's go.
And you know what? We're just
No,
gonna
there's
read one of
something
his
below.
more-
Is there something else? Oh, man. Unlike the Lakers, he ended up getting one to go.
Here we go. I love the 2015 Warriors parallels to this team. AG trade, Iggy trade fits well because I think Nuggets will come out on fire next season and be even better.
Well, the key then is like who's coming when the cap spike happens. You know,
Right.
is there a
Oh, man.
Durant? No, I'm just they're
It's
not.
Gian-
They're not.
it's
Dude,
Giannis.
there's no more cap
Like
spike.
I thought we were having a drink and enjoying the title.
That lasted for one comment.
Berkeley Bear 2010. Zach, have some Rocky on me. Thanks for covering us well on the national end. Kickballs are a legit defensive player.
It was a compliment for a second there.
It's not. They talk about the compliment sandwich, like compliment bad thing, compliment that. What was that? That was like an insult stack of pancakes or something. I don't know what that was.
That was like when someone gives you the hug and then does the hard slap on the back. You're like, ouch.
Nuggets fans are in a great place right now. Wow, Zach Lowe. Let him know he's wrong, by the way.
Yeah.
Steve May. All stars are voted, chosen in, and some just are.
All right.
Yeah.
What was that?
I think that was in
Murray.
reference to the Murray comment
Murray.
about him being.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay.
He wasn't complaining. He
No,
was
that wasn't-
agreeing.
that wasn't the-
He paid to agree with you.
Francis, love Zach's podcast. Buy him a couple drinks.
Well, there you go.
Zach, you
I
literally
got
cannot get
work
out.
to do, man.
It's-
Like, what do
it's-
people think I'm doing here?
Do you understand? It's no longer up to you. The people have spoken. Like,
A hilarious question from our friend Laking Ball.
He's a Celtics fan
Huge
that watches
Celtics
every
fan.
show and
Watches
pays
every
to
show.
comment every time.
What's
Every
up,
single
Zach?
one.
I know you're a New England guy. What do you think is wrong with the Celtics? In my opinion, they have the best roster in the league. A great duo. Are they missing something, and what is it?
Give him 10 seconds on
Can
the
I
Celtics.
pretend? Can I pretend I'm a mean NBA player?
There you go.
Next question.
Next question.
I love it. I love it. That's an off-season
Zach,
question.
yeah, just so it's clear, Zach's here so he doesn't get fined.
Yeah.
Ariana Marshank, she's chipping in.
She tried. She
Here we
tried.
go. All the nuggets are good. Tomorrow is our day.
There we go.
All the
All
nuggets,
right.
the chicken nuggets,
The silver nugget.
You know what? To be
Nuggets.
fair, in that
Hit that
context,
outro
that's
music.
true.
I'll
Whoa!
hit this
wow.
real quick on
The
the way
boy's
out.
dad.
The boy's dad, living on Long Island. I was in the Nassau Coliseum on 5/13. Does that say 76?
76, yeah.
When Dr. J and Nets finished off David Thompson and Nuggets
Wow.
and the ABA 112-106 for a 4-2 series win. In Colorado since 79 following the Nuggets. Tomorrow night, the circle closes.
That's an all-timer. You know, boy's dad is always here at the bar, too.
Yes.
Every off game he's here. Every other game he's at the arena.
poetry right there.
Yep.
Yeah, it really was.
Well
man.
done.
And we had David Thompson in the bar.
That's
just a few
David
days
Thompson.
ago.
There's the real full circle.
we go.
Zach, you were a fantastic guest.
Thanks,
All-timer,
man.
man.
Appreciate
Well,
it.
I appreciate you guys for bringing me on. I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing, and you know, sports are supposed to be fun, and
Yep.
it's cool to see people having fun at a moment when they should be having fun. You know, maybe it'll be a little stressed tomorrow night, tied in the
Maybe,
fourth
maybe.
quarter
Oh,
or
yeah.
something. That'd be a lot of fun.
Unless
but
we get that Sprite bottle you were talking about.
don't, I'm telling you.
No, we know.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Everybody, you guys know the Lowe Post. Check him out everywhere on ESPN. Hit the like button for us on the way out. We'll see you.